This is the back cover story, and this is the spine. The spine is something that holds the pages into the book. So as I said, that title, Too Many Tomatoes. You can probably guess what the story will be about. Grandfather's garden is popping with peas. It's buzzing with blossoms and bumbly bees. It's bursting with berries and beans and tomatoes and tall, twining vines of too many tomatoes. Too many tomatoes, too many to see, too many for Grandpa and Grandma and me. A plateful, a crateful, a grateful hooray. This town has too many tomatoes today. Grandpa began with a handful of seeds and sun and soil and water as every seed needs. One sprout and another, a shout of surprise. Too many tomatoes climb up to the skies. This dancing hooray. Bursting from barrels and buckets and pails, over the rooftop and over the rails. A holler, a dollar, a nickel, a penny, sing me a song of tomatoes too many. Down to the sidewalk and down to the street, drippery, slippery, juicy, and sweet. Uh-oh, it looks like he might be slipping on a tomato. Red ones and yellow ones, shiny and round, jumbling, tumbling over the ground. Let's see how many they drop. 1, 2, and 3. Tomatoes on trains, tomatoes on trucks, tomatoes on tow trucks with cars on their backs, tomatoes that topple from towering vines, crawling and sprawling in curling designs. So tomatoes don't grow at the grocery store. Too many tomatoes, too many to find, too many above, too many behind. So they're headed to the farmer's market on Saturdays, and Columbus actually has a farmer's market on Saturdays too you could visit with your family. A biscuit to butter, a basket to borrow, sing me a song of tomatoes tomorrow. We have some potatoes, some mixed vegetables. There they are selling their tomatoes, and there's even some bread for sale. One for the teacher, one for the tailor, one for the scientist, one for the sailor. One for the painter, and one for the plumber, one for the dancer, and one for the drummer. Tomato Attack, it's the name of the band. One for the man at the magazine stand. One for the girl with the book in her hand, and her cap frame. One for the boy sleeping under the tree. One for my neighbor. And one just for me. So he saved that last best one for him. Too many tomatoes, too many to trade. Make way for a downtown tomato parade. A riddle to fill, a tickle to say. Hooray for too many tomatoes today. They have a salad with tomatoes. Looks like a tomato pie. I've never had one of those. They have some sliced tomatoes, some tomatoes on skewers, and of course some tomato sauce on that yummy pasta. So there's lots of things they did with their too many tomatoes. So why is that story important, and why do we care about tomatoes? Well, tomatoes are delicious to eat for people, but even for our turtles and tortoises, they like to eat them too. Well, we wouldn't have tomatoes if it weren't for the pollinators. So that's why we're celebrating pollinators this week. They are very important even in our lives. We wouldn't have things like beautiful flowers if it weren't for pollinators that help them to grow. Even things like an apple And of course, one really special pollinator that we have here at Oxbow Meadows, they even produce things like honey. So we're going to go outside and actually explore some of our pollinators that we have on our grounds at Oxbow Meadows. So you can follow me outside. We'll head out to our beehives. We're going to come on out and maybe visit some flowers along the way. On the way out to our beehives, I spotted a couple of flowers. Here's a beautiful hibiscus flower here. You can see the pinks and reds of that flower. So pollinators are needed to spread that pollen from flower to flower as they collect their nectar. There's a beautiful daylily. And even a pretty purple one down there. It's a little smaller. And that one right there is a native flower, that pretty purple flower. So we're going to head out to our beehive. One of our outdoor exhibits at Oxbow Meadows. And this is a very special classroom that we have here. This is actually a screened-in outdoor classroom. And we have a very exciting partnership with the Chattahoochee Beekeepers Association. So they help us manage our bees and take care of them. As you can see in our outdoor classroom, we have a number of hives out there. So each of those white boxes is a separate beehive or a separate bee colony. The worker bees will fly out of that hive, go visit some flowers throughout their day to collect that pollen and that nectar to bring back to the hive to produce honey. So without honeybees and wasps, without butterflies and moths, we wouldn't have too many tomatoes. We'd have no tomatoes. And inside the hive, there's a few different types of bees. As you can see at this little honeycomb, the drone bees are male bees, and they don't do any of the work. They're really important because they help produce more baby bees. The queen bee is one of the most important, if not the most important in the hive. Without the queen, the rest of the hive doesn't really know what to do with themselves. They might even leave their hive if the queen does not live. They produce the babies. The queen produces the babies, and they lay lots and lots of eggs so that we have new bees. There's of course the worker bees. They're the ones that obviously do most of the work. They get the nectar and the pollen, and they start producing that honey. And there is the life cycle of bees. So not all pollinators are insects, but insects of course go through that special process of metamorphosis, so they do change their bodies over their lifetime. So the worker bees start out as an egg. They hatch from their egg that was laid by the queen. They turn into a larva, which is kind of like a squishy bug, and then they form into a pupa before finally becoming an adult. Thanks so much for joining us today to talk about our pollinators here outside at Oxbow, and even in our story, those bees flying around to pollinate those tomatoes. Thanks again for joining us.